James Cameron joined
Yes.
the Stability AI board.
That is the corporate arm or the enterprise arm of the team that came up with MemGPT last year.
Terrapower, this is the one I think Bill Gates is involved in.
Aloha, everyone. It is Wednesday, and you are joining the Daily AI Show. Wednesday means it's news day, so we're going to bring you all of the best news, or at least the news that we are most excited about and think that you should know about. Today, I am joined by Beth and Brian, and I'm Jyunmi, and I think it's going to be the three of us today. Everyone's in transit, and so I wanted to start off with a quick story, just cover some of the big swings that went out there. I think the one that got everyone excited in the back channels here was advanced voice finally came to our devices. So that was a big relief. Now we can check it off of our big list of how many days has it been since you announced this. So we're going to have to make a modification to that. But advanced voice, if anyone hasn't heard about it, it's this really highly touted and highly anticipated feature for communicating with your ChatGPT. And so it gives you a more effective method of communicating via voice. Their previous version was a bit stilted and had less of a conversational flow. With the addition of these new voices that they've added and the ability to just have a more smooth conversation, people have been really excited, and I know I'm one of them, to be able to just talk to my ChatGPT and ask it questions, have it ask me questions, and just go through the session as smoothly as possible. Because I don't know if you knew this, but I don't like to type. So I would rather talk to it. And of course, in the ever-growing we want more and are never satisfied category of things, now can I have advanced voice on my web browser? I would like my web experience because I spend all day on the computer editing and finding out news and all those kinds of things. But I'll close it there. I haven't really had a chance to really test it out, especially with the new voices that they're offering. But it does sound very exciting, and the process was very, very simple. Though I will say, the rumor in the back channel was that if you uninstalled and reinstalled the app, you would get it. So I didn't see an automatic push. It was a forced reinstall that really pushed it for me.
Let me talk about that real quick, because that was something that Matt Wolf actually mentioned. I happened to watch this video last night. So I've had advanced voice mode, but I had the previous version of it, but it was still better than what a lot of other people had. And I've had that for months. And you would know the difference, by the way, because the old one would still have like the 3 or 4 different dots that expanded to like longer lines. And now it's this much more orb looking blue ball in the middle that looks like a swirling ocean almost. And it has a more high-tech kind of look to it. And I do definitely can tell the difference. But like even yesterday, I got all the other additional up to 9 now voices on there. And I was like, oh yeah, now I have advanced voice mode. Well, as I was talking to you guys in the back channel, I was like, hey, for you guys that don't have it, you should check out what Matt did. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should do that too. Well, lo and behold, I did. And I didn't realize that I didn't have the most up-to-date. I got the voices, but I didn't have the blue orb, essentially. And there is a difference between the two of them for sure. So even I thought I was like already sitting on it. And I was like, yeah, all right, I got this a couple months ago. But when I did the uninstall, reinstall, I actually did get the most official release to it. And, you were saying you didn't really have a lot of time to play around with it. I actually did. And I could tell you there's some really cool things coming out of it. On the pure entertainment side of it, getting it to talk in other accents is pretty funny, especially when depending on the voice you pick. The one I have is more of a British voice that I've been using. And so obviously starting with a British voice and then saying do an Irish voice isn't too far of a leap. And so it's funny because you can say like, well, no, talk to me in with an Irish accent. Now do a Southern accent. The Southern accent one for the South was very stereotypical Southern. It was pretty funny. But other things you can do, I was like, hey, can you do impressions? And it's like, no, I can't really do impressions. I'm like, well, I can't remember. We were the three pigs building, I'll huff and I'll puff, right? And so what is that? The three pigs, right? Is the name of that story. And my wife and I was literally like just sitting in bed playing with it last night before we went to bed. And I was like, tell me that, Three Little Pigs as Christopher Walken. And then my wife and I were dying laughing listening to it because it was doing the pauses where you would need to do the pauses about the huffing and the puffing. And it was awesome. And then we were like, we'll do Matthew McConaughey. And then it just starts up with like, all right, here we go. It's like, you got these three wolves, you got these three pigs, you got this wolf. That entertained us for a solid 30 minutes last night as I was dying laughing, listening to this an impression. And like when you ask the voice, it would say like, well, I don't really do impressions, but it will give its best attempt. So like that was more on the fun side of the entertainment on it. If you want to get into by the way, like Matt was saying on his video, that's enough. That's enough. It doesn't need to rule the world. Sometimes it can be for fun. It can be for fun conversations back and forth. The next thing I did, still in the entertainment that I really had fun with, and I posted in our Slack chat, was choose your own adventure stories. So these were my favorite books when I was a kid. If you don't know, you would get these. They weren't particularly thick books, but they were adventure stories. And on page 23, it would say, do you want to go in the cave or do you want to go to the river? If you want to go to the cave, go to page 83. The river's on page 53 and the story would pick up. And so it was a non-linear book, right? I love that because then you could always go back and go the other way. I was like, this seems like something I could have a fun conversation with. So I said, hey, can you do choose your own stories? Yeah, what do you want to do? You want to do a story? Like, yeah. She's like, okay. And she's like, you're an explorer. And I was like, do it with a lot of emotion because like you can get her to like get into the story. And she's like, you're an explorer and you just got on this island. And for the next 20 minutes, me and the voice assistant went through a full choose your own adventure. And what's even cooler than doing it in the book is like, you can think about your answer and you go, well, I don't know. I mean, I think if I go to the altar where the treasure is, that seems like a trap. I'd rather explore the area more, which was option B. And she's like, good choice. That could be a trap. Let's explore the area more to see if there's any more clues that can help us out. And so just like a kid, if I was a 10-year-old, I would have been having a blast. I was having a blast as a 46-year-old, but I was having it would have been super fun. So I think that's cool. If you've got kids, bedtime stories, I think you could do some really fun things with this and have it help. On the business side, same ideas, right? Role playing. Hey, I want to do some role playing with you. Sure. What do you want to do role playing for? Okay. I want you to play the part of this. If it's sales, I want you to play the part of a CRO who's at a sales team and I'm trying to sell them my product. And I really want, to have a conversation, see if I can get them to say yes. And then I even said, like, be a little hard on me. Like, so what's cool about that is when you give her the or him, depending on the voice you have. Mine was a British woman's voice. It's like the second option. I can't remember what it's called. What's cool about that is if you're like, hey, be a little more like not aggressive, but a little bit like forward, if I paused too long in my explanation, if I was tripping over my words, she would cut me off. And I was like, oh, you know what that makes me think of? Shark Tank. I was like, can we do a virtual Shark Tank idea where I try to pitch my ideas for my product, my company does for my products and services, and you really push back on whether you think this is a good investment for you. And then we did a whole Shark Tank virtual thing. Super cool because the voice would push back and say like, well, AI in sales is a large area. Where specifically do you think you would actually help my company with ROI? And I'd say, caught me off guard. So now I was like, well, da 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 da. And it cut me up again. It's like, do you have any testimonials of like use cases where that's actually happened? And I was like, okay, hold on a second. Let me gather my thoughts. You're coming in strong, So, I mean, really, really fun to have these cool conversations. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, but I wanted to share these today because this is just what I've been playing with in the last 12 hours or, 12 hours, something like that. Since realizing I didn't have the most updated version. So that's a lot, but I wanted to just give people ideas of where they could go with this. It's super fun, super enjoy it. Did you play with it at all, Beth? I know you didn't really realize you could do the uninstall, reinstall till later in the evening. But
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to do a lot with it, but the uninstall and reinstall is really key because it does not say update, right? So I have been going to my app store and saying update because that is actually what clued me when I didn't have code interpreter first, right? That the app changed enough that it would say there's an update that you can load. This was not it at all, and what was shared in the back channels was just like delete your app and install it again. And so I just want to say that again in case people didn't get the point originally, because that's really what did it.
And thank you to Matt Wolf, because that's like the only place I found out about it. And he even said that he's at a HubSpot conference right now, and so he was just doing a live, like first time he ever used it, did a live video of it of him just playing around, which was fun, just to see where his brain went with it. But he mentioned one of the other YouTubers that were there was from Canada, and the uninstall reinstall did not work for them in Canada. So Carl said it did, and Carl is in Canada. So
right.
I don't really know. I don't know if this is an across the board will work for you type thing. Unfortunately, if you're in the EU, this isn't going to work for you because they have not deployed it in the EU. And that's not, I saw people on X getting upset about that. This is kind of news too. And they're like, either deploy in the EU or give us our money back for Plus. I'm like, okay, but that's not OpenAI's fault. They have certain rules and regulations they have to follow in the EU. And the EU is saying, hey, we might sue you if you don't apply. And they're saying, well, your rules are a little fuzzy. Until we can really figure out exactly how we're not going to get sued for breaking your laws, we're not going to deploy this. So I understand why people would be, I truly understand why people would be upset if you live in any of the EU countries, because I would want this feature on my phone right now. But
a VPN works. There are several people posting on X. I can use it, right? Just change your VPN to a country where this is available.
Do you re-upload the app? How do you do that?
No.
You get on the VPN, delete the app, re-upload the app. How do you get the new advanced voice mode?
Interesting question. I will link the tutorial because I didn't go through it because I have advanced voice mode.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the...
It really makes senes to me for that. It does if you go on the web app.
No, it totally worked for this, and I will link the tutorial when we do that. But the other thing about it is that like advanced voice mode is just one of the things. You still have O1 preview. You still have like all of the actual things of ChatGPT. So yeah, no.
It's Christmas morning. Everybody gets a shiny new toy, but not you.
Right.
So I get it. If I was like, we don't really run into that a lot in the States, for better or worse. Our privacy laws and data laws are not, the same.
At all.
Some could say not as good, but
yeah.
Well, I do want to take a second and thank everyone in the chat for joining us this morning. Good morning, morning crew. And if you're streaming, take the opportunity to just say hello. We do love to hear from you. And if you've watched the last couple of episodes, Justin's had some great questions out there. So I'm going to lean on you today, Justin, to ask us if there's a particular piece of news you want to hear about. But while you're contemplating that question, I wanted to move on to another story.
Can I hold one before we go on?
Oh, you got one more?
Okay. I have one more just to add to this because it came out with the news from OpenAI.
And mine is also OpenAI, and I don't know if we have the same story. They announced actually 10 minutes in basically to Google's story yesterday, that that the fine tuning that people were doing with GPT-4o and GPT-4o mini was so interesting to them that they extended it. It was supposed to end on Monday this week, and now they've extended it to October 31st. So if you haven't had a chance to play with fine-tuning 4o, which is actually like their still their like showcase model, right? Like that's the main workhorse that they're still referencing. You definitely should take a chance, and we have like 2 months almost, or a month and a half, I guess.
So Brian, a couple months ago, you were on LinkedIn with the rest of us going, hey, let's make a choose your own adventure. And with voice now, I want to fine tune a choose your own adventure GPT. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of there, right? I mean, it came up with the story, but I'm pretty sure if I jumped on right now and I said, well, let's do a seafaring adventure, or let's do a plane flying adventure, it would absolutely adapt to that. That's the fun of it, is it will pull in creativity as soon as you request it, right? It'll, as much or less. The one thing I wanted to mention, and we can move on, Jimmy, because I know we have other stories, is custom instructions. Now, okay, custom instructions, if you don't remember, predate memory, and they really were the only place in ChatGPT where you could put a little bit of customization in how you did it. And the way the custom instructions work is it just sits as a precursor to the rest of your prompt. It kind of brings it in, but it was never perfect. And so despite all my effort to like really dial it in or whatever, same way I feel about memory, like it pulls the most random stuff in for memory. Yesterday, it was like, Brian has a friend named Beth and Carl. I'm like, that's not okay, fine. But like, because I was doing the thing I was talking to you guys and it wanted to do that as a memory. So I am constantly deleting my memory. And I honestly, if I'm being honest, I haven't really had custom instructions in a while. I find them both to be more distracting than not. However, I will say this, custom instructions now plus advanced voice mode on your phone does start to make a little bit more sense. You can tell it to address you by your preferred name. You can tell it to know about it if you want to, your location, right? So if you say, hey, what the weather and stuff like that, depending on the internet, but it should talk about your area. If I was like, what would be a great sunny drive to take, in my area, it would know. So I do think it's worth mentioning, if you sort of like me abandoned custom instructions a bit ago, maybe circle back to that and play with it a little bit in advanced voice mode. So the way you would do that is just go to your phone, go to your mobile, go to the settings, go under, it's not called custom instructions exactly. It's like customized GPT is what it says. It says on or off. Click on that. Then you're going to get your traditional two boxes. The top one is like, what do you want me to know? And the bottom one is more like, how would you like me to respond to you? I prefer responses without all the fluff. I don't, at this point, months and months into this, I don't need ChatGPT to say, great idea about the, that's a really, cut all that out. Cut out. I know I'm a genius. Thank you, ChatGPT. That's fantastic. You don't have to tell me every time. I just want to get to the answer. So I'll put in there like, I don't like fluff. I don't mind a little sarcasm, right? Just a little bit of tweaks in there to get an even better personalized experience if you choose to. So just wanted to bring that up, that they also included that. They also said memory would carry over as well. But I've truthfully had a pretty horrible experience with memory. I don't find it that helpful at all. At the times I want it to work, it doesn't. And at the times I don't want it to work, it adds it to memory. So not really a news story other than to say I'm not super impressed with it at the moment. But I wanted to bring that up. So sorry, Jimmy, go ahead and take us to the next stuff.
No worries. It's all great insights. Well, let's see. The next bit of news that I have is Microsoft announced their new feature or app called Correction. Apparently, it's a service that is based using a combination of smaller models with larger models to help mitigate hallucinations. So Correction, these naming conventions from these tech companies are so off to me. But it's like, oh, yes, a standard word. Okay, but I digress. But Correction allows you to, it will scan whatever document that you're working in. It will identify, or the way it's supposed to work, it'll identify what is potentially an incorrect statement, right? And compare that and tell the larger model, hey, we need to fix this, right? So there's a lot of back and forth, which is not new in the LLM world, by using multiple models to inform another model or a larger model about what something should look like or sound like, and along those ideas. There seems to be some pushback by AI experts saying this is kind of like a Band-Aid for hallucinations. But hallucinations, I forget what the quote was here, but they essentially said removing hallucinations from LLMs or AI is like taking hydrogen out of water. It's not water anymore, that kind of concept. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, or is this going to be one of those features that we just never hear about in the sea of Microsoft releases. And speaking of Microsoft, Brian, you had mentioned this in the back channel, so maybe you can give us a little more information about this. But 3 Mile Island is going to reopen powering a new Microsoft data center or something along those lines.
Yeah, they signed. I don't have it up. I can pull it up because I see it here. So I'll just give you the headlines here. Microsoft has signed a 20-year deal to exclusively access 835 megawatts of energy from a nuclear plant. Says Microsoft just signed a deal to revive the shuttered 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. If approved by regulators, the software maker would have exclusive rights to 100% of the output for its AI data center needs. That's this is just the first of probably many where we will see this. We're coming online now. People will remember this from as the worst nuclear U.S. accident in history, 3 Mile Island. If I remember right, there's 2 towers. Tower 1 or 2, whatever one had the reaction, has been shuttered since the 70s and would never come back online. But there's a second one there that really just went offline a couple of years ago. I think we probably all think 3 Mile Island hasn't been operational forever. No, it's been less than a decade. However, to start these back up and to do it safely with all the new safety standards, and there are so many safety standards, for nuclear that didn't exist in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on and so forth. Takes a few years, I think. So I would have to look in here. Yeah, back online by 2028. So it's only there to 2024. It's going to take 4 years to bring it back online with regulator approval. So this is a pretty big deal because we have heard, all the major players say nuclear power is going to be one of the big parts of how we are able to power our AI future that we all want. We've seen the statistics on it. Running a ChatGPT thing is dumping 40 bottles of water in the ocean. That's not true, but you know what I mean. It's it has an equivalent to it. It's just throwing the bottles directly in the trash. So look, it's easy for us to say oh look, advanced voice, but there's a cost to that. There's an energy cost to that, and I 1,000% support this. And if you look at some of the YouTube channels, Undecided with Matt Farrell, as well as several others, CNBC has put out some good reports on this. We kind of think of nuclear power as being these huge plants, but the reality is, Bill Gates and Microsoft are looking at these other solutions, which are very small. They're not even as big as a house, but they're nuclear reactors, but they're tiny. And they're only meant to do a data center. That's all they would be able to produce the power to. And I think, this idea of seeing the big, tall water vapor stacks, of nuclear power is not really what the future of nuclear energy probably looks like in the future. And a lot of these companies who are doing AI are going to have to get in the energy game if they want to do it. Sam Altman's blog, we haven't talked about that.
So, yes, in addition to the blog, they announced that OpenAI is proposing the construction of 5 gigawatt data centers across the U.S. in various U.S. states. Yeah. So that's in negotiation or proposal that obviously involves the U.S. government weighing in on that and giving permission or approving the proposal. And I'm interested, Brian, in what you just said because you said 5 Mile Island was going to be a 5 megawatt. Is it a gigawatt? So I'm curious.
835 megawatts.
Okay. Right. So I'm curious about how, are we at a place with new technology that a new 5 gigawatt plant could be smaller than the old plant, and what the timeline is for that coming online? Because the timeline that you're talking about is 4 years, right, for 3 Mile Island. So I'm just curious, what is the timeline between the approving of the proposal and getting it built? What is the timeline of building it outside of the approval process? Yeah, right? The approval and the selection.
The general timeline, if I'm correct, and please correct me if I'm off on this, but it's essentially 20 years to get a full plant up and running. Or that's the old,
like an old stacks, that whole thing. Yes, I've heard.
yeah, it took about 20 years from signing, saying, yes, it's good, to building the plant, to getting it up and running and supplying power. So, and this has come up in a lot of discussions about environmentalism and sustainable energy. Is nuclear a viable option? We're on that 12-year timeline or whatnot to do clean energy and sustainable energy and things like that. So the larger conversation of, can we build and implement enough solar and wind, geothermal, hydroelectric and things like that, versus building up nuclear tech from the ground up, creating plants and things like that. What's really nice or interesting, I should say, about these more micro plants is that should be a quicker turnaround. And in the 3 Mile Island case, that's just returning on a shut down nuclear reactor, right? A nuclear plant. And so that's why it's only going to take 4 years. But with that story about building these new plants, that's I would love to see what their estimated timeline is for that, because they're rolling out, stuff. AI is advancing so much, the power needs will be so much. So
right. I mean, you can't wait 20 years for that. Exactly. In what they are projecting that they're building for AI, it's not the next 20 years, it's the next 5. So if you need more energy to be able to do that, or release it to people, or do it in a way that's aligned. I did just Perplexity this, and it says 10 years is sort of average for the U.S., but China and South Korea and Japan have been the fastest builders, and they can do it within 4 to 6.
Yes, so, that makes a lot of sense. They've leaned in.
So perhaps there will be some shared knowledge, and that can happen faster.
I was just to wrap this nuclear, because it's not like news of this last week, but since we're talking about it really quick, this is Terrapower. This is the one I think Bill Gates is involved in.
Right.
I was thinking of. And so you can see here, innovating response. And then right here, our first natrium plant is currently being built in Wyoming. We'll just do a quick learn more here and see if we can see a time on this.
I'm Jayba. Yeah, that'd be great.
The native reactor is more than an idea. It's currently under construction near a retired coal plant in Kennemer, Wyoming. Site selection, 250 workers. Okay. I'm just looking for a date really quick. Key benefits, looking ahead. I wish it was showing an image too of what it looks like, because it's not a very big structure at all. I mean, again, it's definitely the ones I've seen. Let's just scroll down. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is even. It's hard to see for scale how big that is, but
right.
Yeah, that's even bigger than the ones I was talking about. So maybe I'm talking about like micro ones, whatever. Anyway, point is, there's a lot of advancement here. And the last thing I'll say on this is I find this really interesting, because for decades we could have been advancing in nuclear power and making new strides. And because of the negative perception of reactors going bad, Fukushima, what happened in Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, we have all these stories from history. And the reality is, I'm certainly no expert. So take this as you like. That technology has advanced. Safety procedures have advanced. New nuclear reactors are not being built the same way they were in the 70s, right? We've advanced as a species and what we're capable of with technology. So it's interesting to me that we now have this big shiny toy that we all want to play with called AI, and all the things that are happening. And the AI companies are like, look, you like the shiny toy. You want more shiny toys? You want better shiny toys? We can't do this with traditional coal, whatever. We can't do it. It can't produce enough of what we need. Nuclear can. And now all of a sudden, the tide is starting to change a little. People are going, maybe we should look back into nuclear. Maybe it's okay to do these things or whatever. So I find it very interesting. I would definitely be investing in nuclear power because I think there's just a lot there. And that's nothing to be said for, I was getting wrong, fusion.
Right.
Fusion is also might come because of AI.
That's but we need to move on. This is not a whole energy show. We'll do an energy show because clearly we have a lot to say. But
Right.
like you've been saying the whole time, we're gonna solve fusion, right?
Right.
Are they now saying we need 5 nuclear plants so that we can build the AI that will now solve fusion? Or like I have questions. I have questions. So
Right. Yeah, no, fusion would be great. And, maybe a couple of micro nuclear plants to build the AI to solve the fusion question would be fantastic. Then we'd have this like awesome tech that could solve all our energy problems and things like that.
I think we'll have fusion in my lifetime. I really do. I do. I think we're that close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've already been able to do experiments where they've been able to sustain it. Now it's just a matter of replicating and iterating on it so that the sustained reaction is longer and longer and longer.
Yeah. More than power. So, we knew they've done it once, but it's so small, but the power input sometimes is greater than the power output.
Well, that's the biggest question, or the biggest issue. But yeah, they have been able to get more out than put in. And that's that's the basis of the whole tech.
Yep.
But we'll definitely move on. Side note, last mention, Brian, when you found it interesting that we're moving back to the conversation of nuclear, there has been for the last several years I know this is going to sound conspiratorial, but there is a government plan in the nuclear energy realm that is about bringing in a new generation of nuclear activists and pushing that agenda to get more nuclear power use. And so what I see is an alignment of those agendas. And with that, when you have the private side go, hey, billions, okay, let's help the people that we're trying to do their own thing with, not billions. But all right, I'll move on. The other story I wanted to make sure to cover was there's a new company that just came out of stealth called Letta. All right. Now, Letta is the corporate arm or the enterprise arm of the team that came up with MemGPT last year. And so if you don't know, MemGPT essentially proposed a solution for long-term memory, right? Not the same kind of memory that ChatGPT does now, but the biggest issue with any of the chatbots, particularly like ChatGPT or any of the LLMs, is that interaction that you have doesn't have any long-term memory, meaning your state at that moment is the information you have available, right? And so that's why you have to constantly go back and refer to, older responses and all of those kinds of things. But what MemGPT does, it provides that long-term memory so that you can build upon your previous conversations, your history, and things like that. So whether we see that in business applications such as customer service, or even, things like building out personas or simulations and things like that. With something like MemGPT, you can have that long-term memory as you're creating your agent, right? Because you want your agent to remember everything that you've done in the past and build upon that. And so you need long-term memory for that. So their new enterprise arm, Letta, just came out of stealth. They're backed by all of the big people. So there seems to be some really good traction around them. And so I think it's important that we highlight this, because their approach is they're going to be model agnostic, right? So they can provide long-term memory to any model, right? Whether you use Mistral, open source things, or Claude, or any of those kinds of models. Whereas, because the question comes up with O1 Preview, that has to have some sort of memory that crosses the multiple states. When you have that kind of reasoning where you're breaking down the steps and going back and analyzing and all those kinds of things, you have to have some sort of memory. So people ask, like, okay, well, now is it so important to have this with O1? And their counter argument is that's only if you're using O1, we can provide the same service or the same feature for any model. So I thought that was a key piece to bring out. Now they're still maintaining MemGPT under an open source license. So let us just the enterprise version of it, right? Offering the services, the platform, and those kinds of things. So if you want to build out a project and you need long-term memory, MemGPT on the open source side might be able to prove it out for you. Or if you have the money, you can just purchase Leta's offering. So that was the last big story or important story that I wanted to run over. There was a couple of smaller ones like Rabbit, released their law. What do they call it? Their large action model in a general sense, general access. And there's this other company, Ufos, that is making, instead of silicon, they're using glass. So they want a whole fiber optic computing system. So I thought that was interesting. All right, Beth, you look like you had a story.
Because we've been teasing all week, there's something dropping on Tuesday. And so, yes, something did drop on Tuesday. The advanced voice sort of took the news cycle, which of course is OpenAI's MO at this point. But Google did do an announcement of new models that they were dropping, which are actually new updates to old models. So they're production-ready models, right? So what everyone was saying was it's a good day to be a dev, but they weren't dropping like more consumer models. These were API models. So Gemini 1.5 Pro 002, and then the Flash version of that, also 002. And they are offering improved quality across various tasks, including a 20% boost in math-related benchmarks. And this is where, for me, again, like we need better benchmarks, right? Like math-related benchmarks are a great sort of like signal of where people are or where the models are, but I know how many people are doing math-related things with the APIs. So the pricing for Gemini 1.5 Pro has been reduced 50% for both output and input under 128,000 tokens. So, and both of these now have 2 million token windows, and that wasn't true for Flash. And the difference in pricing is that 128,000 tokens, right? It's much cheaper if you're below the 2 million. But they also boast faster output and 2 times faster output and 3 times lower latency. So pretty good stuff. There was a comment that I read on X where like, OpenAI comes out with like, the future is here and it's amazing. And Google comes out with like, we made ours slightly better. Yeah. But slightly better is great. And if you're a cost-conscious dev, then this is super helpful, I think, because it's production ready now for you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Beth. It completely slipped my mind. I know we were talking
no more major stories.
Yeah, I was like, there's nothing else new. It's like, oh, you're right. That I was a victim of the hype as well. I completely forgot that those things came out. All right. Before we wrap up, Brian, was there anything else that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I had other stories. So I want to talk about Duolingo. If you don't know Duolingo, it's an app where you can learn another language. My wife has been doing it consistently. I tried it as well to learn French before we went over to France this past summer. But she's continued to do it. She's used it in the past to learn German. And to touch up on her Spanish. My wife is very good at learning languages. Me, not so much. And so I didn't really stick with it because I felt that it was very like boxed in. It just wasn't really my learning style for learning it. And I just had trouble with it. Now, Duolingo, this is kind of like a shake of the fist type news story because they kind of annoy me. They promoted this, like, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the upper version of it. And we even subscribed as a family to like that annual plan in order to get to that level. And I never really saw anything come. It was like Duolingo is still Duolingo. Well, Now they're coming out and they're saying they have AI powered adventures, and it looks like a little mini games, and they're also doing like a video call. What I haven't played with it because, like, again, we would have to upgrade to pro, blah blah blah. And I'm not doing that. My wife's the only one that's really using it anymore. But the reason I mentioned was one of the things I felt like was problematic was the characters they have on there. Like, there's this little boy that's super annoying in French, the French little boy. You can barely understand. It's like this high pitched voice. It doesn't really help like understand or learn or comprehend. And then they have some other voices that are like no better or worse. And I always kind of felt like that was a downside of the app. So now, like, AI powered, and now one of the characters will show up on your phone as if you're having a phone call, and then you could have a more unstructured conversation. That's good, but I think there's a lot to be said for, like, when you look at the power of these other advanced voice model and stuff. Like, I feel like Duolingo could be doing a lot more to not be so constrained by these like 4 characters that weren't really great to begin with, and use more AI to do it. The mini games are like, you go into a boulangerie, which is like the traditional bakeries. They have to abide by certain standards. And so you go into the bakery in France and you can kind of walk to the counter and you can do this and a little mini game in there. And I do see the value of that. It kind of becomes like a little mini role-playing game. So like where they're going with it, but sort of feel like I've been burned personally with a little bit of Duolingo's advancements. So this newest announcement from like 2 days ago, hopeful if that's the way you learn. I mean, my wife does okay with it, but not really where I want to see it. I definitely want more of a first-person adventure, walking through towns where it's a little more unstructured and you can just have conversations with anybody. And because of the use of AI, it can manufacture that conversation. No different than advanced voice mode right now. And frankly, I haven't thought of this, but advanced voice mode does know several different languages. And so I almost wonder if I could just start a conversation and say, help me learn some basics. I'm going to be over in France. I'm going to be in Paris for a business trip next week. Help me just get the basics so I can get on the trains and all that kind of stuff, and have some conversations. I would imagine it would do almost a better job. So that's one of my stories. It's just one of the things that came up. We talked about Suno last week. I just wanted to bring that up because Suno, for their pro users, now has a song chopping feature. So we were just talking about Timberland last week and sort of what Suno and Udio are doing. Suno continues to impress with new updates. So I thought it was worth mentioning them. And I do love this other story really quick, that Figma's AI-powered app generator is back after it was pulled for copying Apple. So if you don't know that whole backstory, Figma had some issues where they overfit, I guess would be a better way to say it. And when they were creating apps, they looked identical to like Apple apps. And the CEO came out and said, my bad, and that shouldn't have happened, but it did or whatever. And they pulled it, obviously, because it was like definitely infringement. And now it sounds like they're back. So it'll be interesting to see what their AI-powered generator is producing, or if it's been red teamed enough, or if users are going to use it and immediately find out once again that it is copying something it should not be copying, whether it's Apple or otherwise.
If you think about it, right, this is the most like I want to create an app that looks like a really good app. Yeah. What's the most likely response to that? What's the most probable? You want it to look like an Apple app.
Yeah.
Look,
clearly it was in their training data.
We can make it look exactly like an Apple app, even function like that. Yeah, definitely. I have one last story, which is that James Cameron joined the Stability AI board. And that is that's significant because Stability AI had all the problems and is being sued in lots of ways. James Cameron joining the board seems to be pun intended, I guess, a stabilizing news story, like adding some stability to stability. And he was asked, or he gave some talking points about why he was joining. And what he is most interested in is the intersection between AI and CGI. So most movie effects prior to AGI were done with CGI. And now they're still pretty distinct. This is an AI effect or this is a CGI effect. And he is really interested in where they start to meet and overlap. And that bodes well for what's coming in AI video.
Yeah, I think his decision to join the board and to his announcement of joining the board like you said, it's a stabilizing influence, but it definitely adds more credibility to the conversation between filmmakers, performers, actors, and their concerns about AI in going into their industry. So hopefully, he will be able to provide that point of view to jumpstart that conversation a little more, or put a fire under that conversation. And I think that's a good thing for stability, or stable AI, and and for the actors unions and for the film industry as a whole. So I will be watching what he says and what they do from this point on, and we'll see what comes out of that. All right. Any other news stories, things that you guys want to talk about? No?
Okay, wait, it's not a news story, but it's a funny comment. The last one.
Okay, do it.
Sam Altman put out his blog, and you can go read the blog, so we don't have to cover that. But that was in the news because he put out a blog or whatever, and it's all about the future of AI and stuff. And somebody said, I put the blog in the ChatGPT and asked for a summary, and it said, we're raising money. Like, mic drop. Just wanted to end on that. I thought it was the best comment. The whole summary was, we're raising money. If you read the blog, that'll totally make sense. You should go do that. Sorry, that's the last thing I got.
No, perfect. And on that, we'll wrap it up for the day. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this live show. Thank you, everybody in chat. It's always great to see the fantastic conversations that you're having. And remember to tune in for Thursday and Friday. And remember, Friday is we're going to be doing a little something special after our initial stream. We are going to have a special stream where we're going to show off our the new platform that we're moving to is Restream. So tune in for both of those if you can. We'd love to see how much more we can interact with our folks who are joining us live on stream. We see a lot of new features, but we want to put them in practice. So if you want to try it out with us, let us know. And remember, that's also when we want to try out our new theme song that you're going to create for us, right? I know we mentioned it earlier in the week, but send us your submissions. Just email us at thedailyAIshow@gmail.com, and we'll take a look at those, and maybe, just maybe, one of those will be the new theme song for the Daily AI Show. All right. I think that's it for us tonight, or for today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, if you haven't already checked out the newsletter, comes out every Sunday. You can always sign up for that at thedailyAIshow.com. And that's it. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Aloha.